Well, I did say that we're turning our attention to security, and there is more than enough to chew on when you talk about security in Nigeria today. We're also being joined, in addition to Honorable Mark Biller, who's still with us in the studio, we now have with us AIG, that's Assistant Inspector General of Police, Austin Iwa, retired. Well, he retired just very recently, I think October last year. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you for having me.
You have seen and you have heard and you have experienced the current, the security challenges that Nigeria is currently facing. And a number of people are more than concerned about what is going on. I think members of the House of Representatives recently raised that question of security, and it's not the first time they've raised it. They've raised it frequently. Perhaps you raised it more frequently than you have in a number of years, because it is very worrisome for a lot of people now. What are your immediate comments on the security situation in Nigeria?
Well, this is becoming very frightening because whilst you think that the security situation is being managed, you discover that it's escalating and expanding from time to time, from day to day. You discover that with all the efforts of the police and other security agencies, there seems to be some level of difficulties from the side of the security agencies in actually tackling this menace. And what I always say is that I always question government commitment to security, because some of us know what happens in other parts of the world where government gives direction and focus on how security should be tackled. Let me hasten to say that perhaps Nigeria is about the only country where security issues or safety and security issues are entirely left to the security agencies to tackle.
By government, you mean who? Precisely.
Oh, of course, there are federal government,
the federal government, the state
government.
Precisely who are you referring to?
Federal government, state governments, and other levels of government. I mean, Nigeria is about the only country where you don't have a national policy on anything that has to do with security.
I find it interesting that you say so.
Yes.
Because
I mean, if there was one, let me know, because we don't have a national policy on neighborhood policing or community safety. We don't have a national policy.
It is interesting that the current Inspector General of Police says he's very serious about this community policing thing, which, I don't know, maybe you, as a former police officer, or you're retired now, you'll be able to shed a little more light on what we should be doing. But it is interesting that you say that you question government's commitment on security, when we hear oftentimes that the problem is funding. And we hear oftentimes the National Assembly has approved this amount of funds. You know, the emergency funding that they approved, $1 billion, I think, was for security. These are monies, still being thrown into security on a daily basis without commensurate results.
Does the funding come? Take, for example, the police. What is the percentage of budget that was given to the police, release that was given to the police? Just 20%. What can 20% do in terms of all the gamut of challenges that the Nigerian police has to tackle on a daily basis? What can 20% do? Not even 50%, not even 70%. 20% of budget is given to the Nigerian police to tackle the entire security challenges in this country, and you think that will have results?
Perhaps that's not the reality. Yes, 20%.
That's the reality.
From the federal government. But the state government will tell you that we support with all our might the police force in our state. We buy vehicles. We, minus the funds that we also give to ensure that there's a smooth running. You have been a commissioner of police before.
Yes, in 3 states.
In 3 states.
And let me give you an example.
What is it like?
What
was it like?
Let me give you an example. When I was commissioner of police in Gombe State, one of the problems I discovered was the problem of herder-farmer conflict. And we did a study of the state, and we discovered that what the states actually need is to develop structures. And we went ahead and worked with the state to develop structures. And like I always say, if there's any security problem in whatever form it is a failure of governance in one aspect or the other. In Gombe State, we were able to develop a structure that was able to interface with the herders and the farmers. And so within a span of time, we discovered that government was able to develop a policy towards that. And we encourage them. There are a number of international protocols, for example, ECOWAS protocols, that we encouraged government. I encouraged the government that, look, let's take a look at this protocol and see what you can domesticate in your state. The ECOWAS decision on transhumance and ECOWAS directive on transhumance. Even the federal government, who is a signatory to that directive and decision, has not even domesticated it. And so when government does not give directives, does not give directions and focus on a particular aspect of security, you are left to the Nigerian police and other security agencies to do what, of course, they are not expected to do. The job of the police and other security is to enforce, is to implement policies, is to implement strategies. I mean, take for example in UK, where, I mean, it's a Commonwealth country and we're very familiar with. There's a national policing plan.
Yeah, you were telling us what it was like as CP.
Yes.
What kind of support you got from the governors. And if, I'm just wondering, if the governors support you entirely, why is it still so difficult for commissioners or for the police to be funded at that level?
Well, I don't know. Depends on the state. Well, like I said, I was in Kaduna State. We had a series of programs in the state, in Gombe State. For example, we had a back-to-school program, you know, where kids and young people that have experienced social exclusion and poverty were brought back to the school. We initiated the program, and the government
on Gombe State, but not Kaduna and not Bayelsa, where you said.
Well, I spent 2 years in Gombe State, so we did a lot of work there compared to Kaduna, where I spent barely 6 months. But even in Kaduna, we were able to. In Kaduna, we started a program called Renunciation of Violence and Retrieval of Arms. We did that program, and we were able to penetrate some of these bandits and get quite a number of them, almost 1,000 bandits that were able to renounced violence, and we were able to collect more than 70 different types of arms from them. And the government knows, the state government knows, the governor of the state knows, because we're always briefing it. It was a public affair. Some of your television guys were there when we were doing it.
Isn't it a problem in itself, the fact that commissioners of police don't stay long enough and they have to be posted around?
Well, I cannot talk about the politics of posting. I mean, it's not in my stride to do that.
No, well, the politics is what is behind the scenes.
Yeah, but
I'm talking about the actual action itself of posting policemen around the country. Do you think it's helpful?
It's helpful to a large extent, but I think there should be a tenure. I mean, if a commissioner of police is allowed to spend 2 years in a state, that is enough for him or her to carry out a number of projects that will make impact on the level, on the challenges in the state. But 3 months, 4 months, not of course, no effect. No
Let me
impact.
ask Honorable Gwila here. Are you surprised that he's questioning the commitment of government, or are you too questioning the commitment of government, given what you have seen and experienced in your state, in your constituency?
Well, yes. I am one of those who raised the motion where we actually summoned Mr. President to address the National Assembly. There are 2 such motions which, of course, he did not honor. But we are trying to make a very clear and unequivocal...
He's yet to honor, because...
No,
have you wrapped up already?
No, we haven't, but there are timelines to those motions. Timelines he was advised within which to address us and the nation about that. Now, we want to make it, well, let me not speak for the National Assembly. I want to make it clear that I personally believe and I appreciate the AIG's honesty. It is a failure of governance. Why? Fundamentally, our Constitution even provides the primary role of government is the security and welfare of the people. So when you go about trying to pass the buck, saying it's political, it's whatever, even if for any reason which is not true, in my opinion, even if that was the case, you still are supposed to be able to have the capacity to tackle it. Everywhere in the world, they don't pass the buck, they tackle security issue, no matter the origin of
I believe
it.
you're making reference to the Army's statement that this could be politicians, or
the Minister of Information.
Yes.
And I thought it was unbecoming of the minister of our country to get up and admit their failure by saying that it is political and another opposition party is fueling this. That to me shows the whole world that our government has failed in its primary responsibility. Because in my state, for instance, they don't know parties. They know that children are being killed, pregnant women are being dewombed openly, old men are burnt in their houses. It's not about parties, it's about insecurity. They can no longer farm in their villages, they're fleeing. We have IDPs all over Benue.
But we've seen your governor, I mean the governor of Benue State, have a conversation with the president. And
Yes.
I think only recently he was at the villa again to brief him.
Yes.
And things seem to be improving in Benue State. Isn't that the reality?
Well, yes, that I would admit. Operation Whale-Stroke is the only security intervention that has yielded a semblance of some results. When I say a semblance, it's because we still have these attacks going on. People have still not been able to return, and because they have not been proactive. This is another place where I need to raise the alarm to Nigerians. Our security operatives, for some reason, don't seem to carry out the rules of engagement we know everywhere in the world. We have identified, the governor has done so severally, the location of these people, but they wait and are reactive. Do we no longer have the strong military force we used to be proud of? Can't we go there and attack and disperse those people in their very hideout, which we all know? It's public knowledge. You can ask anybody. And this is alarming. I start to wonder, do we have the aerial capacity any longer to go and attack these places? But what you see is these people keep coming to attack. And then what happens is our military is reactive. Another problem we have is the military, the security coalition, let me call it that, because it's not just the military alone, now depends on the state to even get communication service where they are. So you can see part of what he's talking about in terms of the capacity. You now need the state government who has limited resources, like in Benue. We're not Lagos State, unfortunately. You now need us to provide you with telecoms services. And this is part of what I personally want to take up with the telecommunications infrastructure in this country, in this next National Assembly, because they are not also being sensitive to the security of this nation. And that is part of still a failure of governance, because we have USPF in the NCC, Universal Service Provision Fund, which we're going to hold to account how they spend it, because they are supposed to intervene to provide this telecoms infrastructure, because our people, when these raiders come, don't have a means of raising any alarm. All over the world, we know there's 911. Even if we don't have 911, at least I can call a number and say, hey, these people are here. But they finish to kill our people, and then suddenly you see the military arrive after the fact.
The questions, Joe, as to how the National Assembly has oversighted, the security agencies. If we're hearing from the Acting Inspector General of Police that only 20% has been disbursed, isn't that also, from whatever it is that is appropriated, isn't that also because the National Assembly hasn't been proactive in seeing just what has been earmarked and what has been approved, what has been spent, what has it been spent on, and whether or not the spending is effective, so to speak.
Now, that is a very good point. If we had a government that respected, and I say this with all sincerity, that respected the National Assembly, then we would be able to do that. But do you see the fisticuffs that happen even just to pass the budget they brought to us. The refusal of the ministers to honor the summons, something that is not done in other climes, and yet we want to progress as a nation. That responsibility, you said, is obviously that of National Assembly. And I would admit that, yes, we obviously have fallen short in that regard. But we are also limited in the fact that we do not control the disbursement and the inflow in our nation. That is strictly the responsibility of the executive. Now, we go ahead and we pass budgets, which we have passed. Wait and see. At the end of the fiscal year, you will discover only 30%. Like you said, it's an embarrassment that the government would say they're fighting security. Then the security agencies who are supposed to be at the forefront get only 20% releases. How is that supposed to happen?
Moving forward, and what should we be doing? I mean, from your experience so far, you've made quite a number of recommendations in terms of CP being in one state for at least 2 years for meaningful development in that state. But what else, from your experience, should we be doing?
Well, let me just make a brief comment on the budgeting. Like we were speaking outside before we came here, I told him that the budgeting system that is provided for the Nigerian police is wrong. What they do is the envelope system budgeting. All over the world, the police budgeting is based on activity-based budgeting. There are systems of calculating or analyzing how activity-based budgeting is done. If the government is very serious, if the Ministry of Finance is very serious, they should be able to change the budgeting system of the Nigerian police so that the budget focuses on what the police is doing. For example, ask the ministry, ask the government, do you budget for patrol? How much is budgeted for patrols? How much is budgeted for investigation? How much is budgeted for forensic activities or patrol activities and all that? But moving forward, I think what the government should do, apart from having a tenure for commissioners of police, the government should give direction. What kind of security do you need for the state, for the country? And then develop a policy, a strategy that the police and other security agencies will begin to implement. In UK, they call it steering and rowing. The government steers, the police row to the direction of government. In this country, it's not. We don't even know what kind of security the government wants.
We just heard about community policing, and the Inspector General has been mouthing it a lot. What do you think it should involve?
Well, community policing has been with us for some time. Fortunately, I was one of those that started the program in 2003, and I was there for 9 years, and I headed the place for 5 years. Basically, partnership is very key. Problem solving is very key. Crime prevention and community safety is very key.
Why are we not seeing it being, put into practice?
But most fundamentally is organizational transformation, and that is where the challenge is, because there seems to be a thinking or an attitude that community policing is just an add-on to police work, whereas it is the definition of police work. It is proactive policing. What has been happening has been more of reactive policing. So, and the idea is that crime is a collective problem that you need to bring in multi-partners. You need to bring in a lot of people that have something to do with why the crime, something to do to reduce the crime. And so community policing has been there. There's a lot that has been done, but it's still a project.
I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts.
Yes.
We'll take another break. We'll come back and we'll wrap up the segment. Our closing moment with Honorable Mark Bila and retired AIG Austin Iwa. Now, you were talking about what ought to be done. Let me quickly ask, Honorable, what do you think should be done in your opinion?
Okay, first and foremost, the government of the day needs to realize what priorities our Constitution places on them. It is fundamental. And they should eschew this unnecessary bickering and politicking with such a serious issue and begin to look at how to tackle it. And one of the critical ways to do that is there has to be increased funding in that area.
Are we just going to be throwing funds?
No, I was going to get there as well. And one of the things we need to ensure in that regard is the accountability and the capacity of those who are saddled with these funds in carrying out those responsibilities. Nigerians, the National Assembly, have cried foul over the service chiefs over and over again, but Mr. President seems to be satisfied in their performance, which unfortunately, in my own regard, has not translated into succor for the Nigerian people. And one of the things this 9th Assembly is going to hold this government accountable for is the resources that they have not transparently shown us they receive on behalf of this nation. It has not been accounted for, and we will hold them accountable, because that is part of the origin, because they seem to give excuses about funding for those security agencies when we know from the fundamental statistics that this is how much we should be receiving. There's been a surplus over the years from the oil price appreciation that has not been accounted for. We don't know where those monies go. Why don't we even fund up to 50% of our annual budget in a year? The president and his administration need to let us know. Nigerians need to know these are the problems. So when you see we appropriate total amount for the military or the police, at the end of the day, they don't even get up to half of it.
Your closing words on this matter?
Yeah, just like I said, we should look at the budgeting system of the security agencies.
The problem cannot be all money.
Yeah, it is not all about money. The problem is other areas of support that the government needs to be giving these security agencies. And I made mention about giving direction and focus for the security agencies. The government needs to come out and tell us what kind of security, safety and security regime that needs to be in this country, and how they want to support the security agencies in carrying out those in maintaining that regime, the safety and security. They need to do that. The government needs to not only fund the police, but fund the police and other security agencies, but provide all that is needed for these organizations to exhibit their competence.
It's a fine place to leave it. We have to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Honorable Mark Gila is a lawmaker representing Gwe East and Gwe West in Benue State. And we also had with us retired Assistant Inspector General of Police, Austin Iwa. That's been Sunrise Daily from our Abuja studios this morning. Thank you so much for watching. And Maokwe Ogun Yusuf is back to the crew in Lagos.
Well, yes, and thank you for watching as well. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
I am Gimba Omar.
I'm Akine here saying have a wonderful day.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this program are those of the maker and do not reflect the views, opinions, and endorsement of Channels Television.